Well, for those of us that are not in Nigeria, we are preparing for our Salah holiday, which happens to be the holiday meant for our Muslim brothers. But usually, because Nigeria is more of a secular state, if you put it that way, the holiday is open to anybody. So it's a public holiday, probably from Wednesday or public holiday. So today, before the public holiday, I just thought we should touch a class. The last class we spoke about, I think it was about a daughter who was introducing our teacher and her father. And we went through that class. I hope we had some time to revise some of those things. And I did say in the last class that anybody is free to uh, send a message in the comment section if you need a textbook so you could practice on your own. If maybe looking from the screen may not be so convenient, you could have that and you practice. It's not a big deal. The idea is to get people to understand the Chinese language as minimum as possible. By the way, I was discussing with a Chinese friend and I was like, one of these days, maybe when I'm on site or maybe when I'm having a meeting in my office, I'll try to film that experience so that I could put it um on my YouTube channel and people could see how conversationally, aside me teaching, how I converse with a Chinese colleague. I'll try as much as possible to cover the Chinese face because they may want their privacy. So you may not see who I'm discussing with, and we just talk on general things about work. So you can just see how the communication flows. But basically, um, the idea is for us to practice language generally. Even children, when they start school, they teach them the ABCs and they expect them to practice. And while we're also teaching our children the dialects of maybe our local dialects, as much as possible, also let them practice. When they don't practice, they forget it. And gradually, children are beginning to forget these things because we kind of speak more of English with them. Okay, having said that, today we're going to be is lesson 6, and it's more of a classroom setting. It's more of a friend setting. It's more of the topic is 我学习汉语. 我学习汉语 means I am studying Chinese. 我学习汉语. I am studying Chinese. So this may be a conversation with foreign students who probably went to China to study and just conversing. What are you studying? That would be some of the things like when I was in China, those are the things you face. What's your course? What are you studying? Are you studying Chinese or are you studying it in English? So these are just the basic communication. So we'll go straight into the conversation. So this is between Mike. Mike is Mike. Mike in English. You know, when I was in China, my name is Precious actually. And because the Chinese don't have precious in their how will I call it now? Is it in their dictionary or what will I call it? In their there's something I forgot in this it has in their lexicon. They don't have it, so they have to look for some Chinese words that can give them a sense of that pronunciation. So I was called Puresi. My name is Precious. They called me Puresi while I was in school. So Mike in Chinese, if they were to call it, it would be Mike. Mike. They'll look for two characters that can fit in. It may not necessarily mean anything, unlike their names that have meanings. My name may not have any meaning, but it's just to make it easy for them to pronounce. So Michael, I think, is a foreigner, and the other one is Jandong. Jandong is the Chinese name, of course. Jan and Dong, surname being Zhang and Dong being the first name. So I'm sure Jandong is a Chinese person. Michael should be a foreign student looking at the setting of the whole thing. So I think this is a foreign student who is studying Chinese in China. So he makes a friend with a Chinese person, just like everybody who's trying to study Chinese right now is hoping to have some conversation with the Chinese person. So Michael is asking, 请问你贵姓? Chinwen. Ni Guishin. I'm going to explain what that means. Chinwen is like, excuse me, like when you're trying to ask somebody's name or you're trying to get somebody's detail. Not that kind of excuse me, you're like, excuse me, I want to pass. Not that kind of excuse me. The kind of excuse me that is like a polite, courteous excuse because you want to ask the same person you are excusing some questions. So Mike meets a Chinese person and he say, Chinwan, that's excuse me. Niguishin. Niguishin is like, what's your name? That's actually what it's. And there's another one, Nijao Shama means, but Guishin here means more of surname. But if you're conversing with somebody and you're familiar with the person and you tell the person Guishin, ordinarily might tell you his full name. But Guishin here means surname. But it's just basically trying to know your name. But it's another way, let's call it a courteous way in a way of asking somebody what's your name in Chinese. More courteous than Nijao Shama Minzi. Nijao Shama Minzi is a bit more friendly. Niguishin is more cultural and cultured. Basically, they will say is the surname they are asking for, but it's also a way of asking for names. But Guishin is like family name. That's what it means. So if Mike is asking for, say, Chinwen Guishin, it's indirectly asking for the surname. So Jando is replying, Wo Shin Zhang. It's trying to say, my surname is Zhang. My surname is Zhang. That is Wo Shin Zhang. Wo Shin Zhang. Please take care of the tones and all this vowel. But we have dealt with the tones, we've dealt with the initials, we've dealt with the finals. So right now it's about conversation, conversation, conversation. So as I teach, please let's pay attention to the tones, pay attention to the mix of the finals and the. If you notice, I said Wo Shin Zhang. I didn't say Zhang because like I said, during when we're still practicing the tones and the finals and the initial, I said whenever there is a ZH, it's like and the ang takes your tongue up, it gives you the sound, and the z there is almost like quiet, it's like a j. So Washinjang, that's what it is there. So it's not zang, don't call it zang, call it jang, Washinjang. So that's what it's saying, that my surname is Jang. Then you have Micah. Micah is asking now. You can understand the first name, he said Chinwen Iguishin, asking for the surname, being polite. Probably this is the first time meeting the person. Now, John has replied back, so a conversation has ensued. So at this point, it can get a bit friendlier. So now he's asking, Ni Jao Shama means. Usually when somebody wants to say, what's your name? Ni Jao Shama means. This is what is your name. When somebody asks you that, Ni Jao Shama means, it means the person is asking, what is your name? And Jandong is replying, Washi Jandong. You can say at this point, is mentioning all the names. But when they asked him before, Ni Guishin, he only spoke about the surname because that's like asking for the family name. And it's also a very polite way to start because the Chinese honor their family name very well, like their family, because I don't know how to explain it, but they take their, so when you ask them their names, they will hardly tell you their first names. They will always identify teacher Zhang, student Zhang, manager Zhang. Their surname is what they call most times. It is when you come further and say, okay, please, what's your full name? Like I would have said, Nijao Shama means what's your name? Then they will now give you the whole name, and they hardly ever call their first name, usually hardly. So Jandong is now saying, Wajao Jandong. Michael is now saying, Nishi Nagoren. Now we're going into conversations. The reason is usually it's like when we go to China, these are the basic things they ask. The moment they know your name, the next thing they want to know is what country are you from? So when Jandong is now, Micah is asking Jandong, Nishi Nagoren, Nishi Nagoren. Jandong is replying, was she Zhongguoren? Full stop. And then he is now asking, ni shi na Guoren? Meaning, Michael was the first to ask Jandong, where are you from? What country are you from? So that's she, ni shi na Guoren. What country are you from? And now Jandong has replied, I am a Chinese. Because when you put Nag, was she Zhongguoren? Zhongguoren means Chinese. It means, what's your nationality? I'm a Chinese. That's what it means. Once you put Ren in front of the Guo, nationality is what they're asking for. So it's I'm a Chinese. And now it's asking Jandong now. Jandong is not asking Nishi na Guoren. Then Michael is now replying, was she me Guoren? That means I am an American. Americans are called Meguoren. America is Meguo. But when you put the Ren in front of it, like I said, you're talking about the nationality. So Jandong has replied, I am a Chinese. And you, what country are you from? Or what's your nationality? And Michael is now saying, was she Meguoren? Meaning I'm an American. So Jandong is asking, Ni shui shi shema? Ni shui shi shema? Ni shui shi shama. What are you studying? That's the question. What are you studying? Ni shui shi shama. Micah is replying, Wo shui shi han yu. I'm studying Chinese. Wo shui shi han yu. I am studying Chinese. Ni shui shi shama. Wo shui shi han yu. Then Jando is now asking, Han yu nanma. Do you remember in one of our first classes, they started with that? Han yu nanma. And then Michael is replying, Han zi很难, fine bu tai nan. So what he has done is, why Jando is asking, is Chinese difficult? Is Chinese language difficult? Michael is being honest. Now he broke Chinese language into different sections where he's talking about the characters and the pronunciation. So he didn't generalize it to say Chinese language is simple. He's saying that Hanzi is very hard, but pronunciation is not that hard. That is to say, he can converse with you. As you can see, I can communicate with you because I have to pronounce it. I've learned this thing so I can pronounce it. But if you ask me to write it, it's really, really hard. For us, when we were in school back then in China, it was really hard, but with constant practice and the fact that we could copy from, like, I could copy from the text and write, and after a while, you memorize how all these characters go. But the moment I left China, we stopped the writing thing with the hand. I can't write with my hands now, except I'm copying from the text, but I can type. And when I type, I know the character I'm looking for. I can memorize the character. I know the idea of the character. But if you ask me to write, I might miss out one thing. But there are some characters I know without any stress. But I just don't enjoy writing because, like Michael said, hands and then writing in characters is hard, but pronunciation not so difficult. So this is the communication between two persons, one a foreigner and one a Chinese. Obviously, the foreigner had gone to China to study and he had made a friend who happened to probably be his classmate or maybe roommate or whatever. And they met. And the first thing is, excuse me, what's your surname? I think that came into usually it's not a communication that people would ask from first time. Rather, they'll go for ni jiao shema minzi. They might not ask you ni guishin, but they just wanted us to know guishin what it means. So when somebody say ni guishin, is asking for your surname, your family name. But when they want to know your name, they say ni jiao shema means. So that's the communication between Micah, who is Mike, and Jandong, a Chinese person. So you can see it's a classroom environment, coming out with their books. Conversations like this need to be practiced. Now, somebody will say, I'm not a student. I'm probably working in a company. How does this relate with me? It relates. Because if you're going to meet a Chinese person, whether you like it or not, you are going to communicate to know the Chinese person's name. So let's assume you start with a ni hao, right? We've talked about ni hao before. You go around with a ni hao, okay? And when you're done with the ni hao, what next are you going to do? The next thing you're going to do is you want to know what are you doing? What's your work? But let's not forget that this textbook is for school. For the work, we'll go into that. Person can say, oh, was she Ishan? I'm a doctor. Was she Gonchan Shu? I'm an engineer. Was she Shu Faja? I'm a calligrapher. There will be such communication. Now, the truth of the matter is that as you learn the basic communication with constant practices, you begin to know particular conversations that are meant for a particular job. I'll give myself as an example. Like I said, this just is a way of giving back. Hopefully, there will be people who would need it in their SS1 to SS3 if the Nigerian policy falls through. Because these are basically what they're going to teach, the basic things of how to communicate generally. When you get into the market, when you get into the market space, then you'll be able to know what would you say when you go to the market. They can't teach you everything of what you say, but when you begin to practice, you will be able to understand what I should say, what's pepper, what's tomato, what's that. You're not going to expect it in this class. This class is supposed to teach you the tones, the character, the initials and finals, how to pronounce, and then the basic things that you need to know. All the things, it is in your course of practicing that you now have to search out, because the way the Chinese is, you pick one word and another word, you join it together, it forms another word, but that goes with constant practices. But let me know deviate from there, because that's how I learned. This is exactly how we were taught. Then you go out there, you practice. This was a textbook I used. You go out there, you practice. They will not teach you outside the textbook. But when you go out with this, you've learned. You already know how to know Nishina Goren. So you meet a Chinese, you see that you know he's a Chinese, but you just want to practice Nishina Goren. And while I was in school, there were other foreigners. For example, there were people from Ghana, from America, from Germany, from Spain. There were a lot of people from Japan and all. So we practiced amongst ourselves. Nishina Goren, in some cases, funny enough, some people couldn't speak English among foreigners. So we had to practice the Chinese we learned on class with them. Interesting, right? Yeah, exactly. They couldn't speak English. So, and we're all Chinese students learning Chinese. So the best way to go about it was to speak and learn with them the Chinese language. So the Shinagwaran, and of course the basic, when you tell them the country, they tell you, also explain, oh, then what are you studying? What brought you to China? Or what brought you to Nigeria? What brought you to my space? And then you have to explain in the way that you know to explain. Now we're going back to, if you notice, the conversation are getting longer and deeper, but it's expected that by now we should have practiced from the basic to now. If we've been practicing, honestly, these words should be very familiar right now. They are no longer new words. They were new words before, but now they're not. Now we're moving to the next conversation. Uh, this has to do with sending of parcels. So let's see. A says, 这是什么? 这是什么? 这是什么 means what is this? 这是什么 means what is this? 这是什么 what is this? B says 这是书这是书 That means this is a book. Now, the last time I told her, I said, usually you hear Chinese, you say jega, 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 nega. I said jega means this. Shema means what. Shi in our previous class was a new word. It means is. So, what is this means just shema. This is a book. Shu means book. This is je. And she is. So this is just shema. Just shu. The next question is just shema shu. What kind of book is this? 这是什么书? Now, which is the first question that was asked? 这是什么? 这是书. Now, what kind of book is that? Is it literature? Is it poetry? Storybook and all that. 这是什么书? What kind of book is this? Then I said, 这是中文书 is a Chinese book. 这是中文书. If you notice, they didn't say 这是汉语书. Hanyu means Chinese. Zhongyu means Chinese. Zhongwen means Chinese, but they are used in different contexts. If you're talking about language, I'm learning Chinese language. In that context, you use Hanyu. It's formal. You use Hanyu. But when it comes to the book, you don't say Hanyu Shu. You say Zhongwen Shu because it's now language. The book tells you about language. You're reading a book, so it's about language. It's not about it's not like a noun. Let me use that word. Yes, it's not like a noun. It's more like, it's not really also like a verb, but it changes in context. That's the only way I can explain it. What shui hanyu? I'm studying Chinese language. I'm studying Chinese language. You use hanyu there. But when it comes to the book, you don't say hanyu shu. You say zhongwen shu. It's a context thing. So, 这是什么书? B says 这是中文书. Then the next question is 这是谁的书? 这是谁的书? 这是谁的书 is whose book is this? Whose book is this? That's what the question is asking. 这是谁的书? Another thing you can say 这是谁的书? There are two languages you can use there. 这是谁的书? Then the person is replying 这是谁的书? Whose book is this? Whose book? 谁的 means whose. J is still this is. So be conscious. Let's be conscious of the repeated words that are used. That's how we learn. J, she is still this is. Shu is book. Sheide is the new person, the new language that has come in, and that means whose book. Now the that is there connects the whose and the book, the two nouns together. It's a connection of the two nouns in a way. Who will I call who a noun now? Should I call it a question or a preposition or something like that? Not really a preposition, but whose book is this? So I'm putting a person to the book. So that the doesn't really mean anything. It's just like the way I used to say ma or lo. They don't mean anything, but they give stress to, when you say ma, it means you're asking a question. When you say la, it puts a stress to the sentence, making the sentence like finished, valid and all. So 这是谁的书? The reply is 这是老师的书. If you look at the question, you'll be able to understand. 这是谁的书? It's still different. 这是, now who owns the book? 老师的书. In the last class, I told us 老师 means teacher. So this person say, whose book is this? And you're saying the books belong to the teacher, the teacher's book. Now you finish with the J. You know, the last time I said J, and you know, now they finish with this is. We're now going to that is. So now it's now na shi shema. We are repeating the same thing, but we've just finished with this. We want to use the that. Na shi shema, that is na shi shema. That is what, or what is that? Let's say what is that is the right pronunciation in English. That is a magazine. 那是杂志. 那是杂志. 那是什么杂志? Still the same thing. The only thing that changed there is the 那是 and 这是, and maybe the nouns that they are changing. They were done with the 这. So this, we are getting into serious conversation now for those who want to study Chinese, because this is how you learn every day. So we are done with this is what, or what is this, into what is that. So 那是什么杂志? 那是中文杂志. 那是谁的杂志? 那是我朋友的杂志. 那是英文的杂志. 英文 means English in terms of What kind of magazine? Jaji means magazine. We did that new words last time. So you see why we need to practice. So now they're saying we did that new words and they're like, okay, uh, what magazine is this? Because Jaji means magazine. Say, oh, this is an English magazine. Whose magazine is this? That is Nash. Whose magazine is that? Sorry, we're on that now. Whose magazine is that? Nashi Shweda Jaji. And then you say Nashi Waponyo. That magazine belongs to my friend. Friend means Pongyo. Friend means Pongyo. I'll try not to make this class long. We're supposed to be studying the new language, new words. I don't know if I should take us through the new words. The new words are much. So I'll just stop in this class by just rephrasing something that we're getting deeper into serious conversation. Our conversations are longer and our conversations are getting into the day-to-day this and that. Now, this and that. The last one I said John when it comes to the book. So that's John. Yin Wen is English. Yin Wen means English. England is called Yingguo. America is Meiguo. So if you're talking about English, you hear Yin Wen most times. So Yin Wen, when you say Jeshi Yin Wen the Jaji, Yin Wen the Jaji, and this one was John Wen Shu. So when you say Je here means this. Na here means that. So now we now know what this and that means. Is does not change. Is still is. And in Chinese it's called shi. But this is the character for is. We studied it in the last meeting. As much as possible, I don't want my videos to be so long. In the next lesson, we'll learn the new words and we'll see some other conversations that are within this text. But let's practice what we've learned today about communication and conversing within the office or even the school environment, particularly knowing what to say with this or that. That's my book, this is my pen, that's my desk, this is my fruit, and all that. Let's learn how to pronounce these words, and then next week we will discuss more on we'll be talking more on the new words, because the new words are getting longer, they're getting more, because it's expected that by now, by lesson 6, you should have learned everything we're practicing from lesson 1, because you're going to be using them more from now. So the new words are not like new words. There are things we've learned since, and it's expected that by now you memorize them so that they can be more fluent and fluid in the conversation. Thank you all for this time out with me, and do have a lovely holiday for those of us in Nigeria or in other countries where we celebrate Salah. And for those that are not in those countries, well, till we meet again, this is Auntie P with Chinese Made Easy, as long as we practice. Thank you.